Imagine a quiet, upscale neighborhood where the biggest drama was supposed to be over lawn decorations or holiday lights. But one night, everything changed. A luxurious black Rolls-Royce sat gleaming in the driveway of a family who had just moved in, admired by neighbors and whispered about for its sheer elegance. That peace shattered when flames erupted, engulfing the car in fire. Shocked witnesses watched as the fire consumed the symbol of wealth and pride, unable to believe what was happening. The shocking part: the person responsible wasn't some stranger or a random criminal, it was the son of the neighborhood's notorious HOA Karen, known for controlling homeowners with an iron fist. Karen had earned a reputation for her relentless complaints and petty rules, but no one expected her family to cross the line into something so extreme. Now, this isn't just about a car. This act led to federal authorities stepping in, with charges totaling a staggering $7 million. The tension in the neighborhood skyrocketed, friends and families torn between disbelief, fear, and outrage. How could a single reckless decision ripple into a legal nightmare this big? And what happens next to the people caught in the middle, the victim, the family, and the neighborhood that suddenly feels anything but safe? Stay tuned, because in the next part, we dive into how one night of anger turned into a federal case that has everyone talking, and no one can predict how it will end. The story of that night didn't happen in isolation. The neighborhood had always been a picture of perfection, from the outside manicured lawns, shiny SUVs, and neighbors who smiled politely while gossiping behind closed doors. But beneath that facade, tensions simmered. HOA Karen had long been known for turning minor complaints into full-blown conflicts, calling meetings over mismatched mailboxes or garden decorations. People whispered about her temper, but few imagined it could escalate to something so destructive. Her son, often overshadowed by his mother's dominance, seemed to live in a world of privilege and entitlement. Neighbors described him as unpredictable, sometimes charming, sometimes reckless. That night, however, his actions shocked even those who knew him best. The Rolls-Royce, a symbol of achievement for the black family who had recently moved in, became the target of a vendetta no one fully understood. Why would someone risk federal charges, potentially life-changing consequences, for a moment of anger or spite? As investigators pieced together the scene, a pattern of neighborhood grudges and hidden rivalries started to emerge. Witnesses reported strange encounters, heated arguments at HOA meetings, and subtle threats that now seemed ominously prophetic. The legal implications were enormous, but so were the personal ones. Relationships shattered, reputations on the line, and a community forced to confront its own prejudices and fears. With the authorities tightening their grip, questions began piling up. Was this an isolated act of recklessness, or did it reveal something deeper about entitlement, power, and privilege? And most importantly, could the neighborhood ever feel safe again? The answers were still unclear, and the tension was far from over. The tension in the neighborhood didn't fade after the fire, it only grew. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by social media posts and hushed conversations at local cafes. Some neighbors defended HOA Karen's son as a kid who made a mistake, while others questioned how a privileged upbringing could lead to such reckless destruction. Meanwhile, the family who lost their Rolls-Royce faced not only financial devastation but a sense of violation that money couldn't fix. Every glance at their driveway reminded them of the night. Their lives were turned upside down. The federal investigation added another layer of anxiety. Agents interviewed neighbors, combed through security footage, and followed digital trails that painted a picture of intent, not just accident. Lawyers weighed in, debating whether the $7 million charges were fair or inflated, but no one could ignore the seriousness of federal involvement. Even minor details, a social media comment, a neighborhood meeting, a chance encounter in the grocery store, were suddenly pieces of a much larger puzzle. Meanwhile, HOA Karen tried to maintain control over her image, posting carefully worded statements and insisting her son was misunderstood. But whispers of entitlement and recklessness grew louder, splitting the neighborhood into factions. Some residents began to question not just the family's actions, but the very rules and dynamics that had governed the community for years. Amid all this, tensions between the families, the HOA, and the authorities created a tangled web of fear, anger, and suspicion. Every day seemed to bring new revelations, and every revelation raised more questions than answers. How far would this feud go? Who else would get pulled into the drama? And could this neighborhood ever return to the quiet facade it once had? The answers remained just out of reach, keeping everyone on edge. Days turned into weeks, and the neighborhood that once prided itself on calm streets and polite nods became a pressure cooker of fear, anger, and suspicion. Every glance across the lawns felt loaded, every doorbell knock tinged with anxiety. The black family, still grappling with the loss of their Rolls-Royce, noticed subtle slights and cold stares. Whispers that reminded them that some residents still sided quietly with HOA Karen's family. Meanwhile, Karen herself became more aggressive, calling emergency HOA meetings, sending stern letters, and insisting her son was being unfairly targeted, fueling tensions instead of calming them. Federal investigators intensified their scrutiny. The evidence was piling up, social media posts hinting at intent, eyewitness accounts placing Karen's son near the scene, and surveillance footage showing suspicious behavior in the days leading up to the fire. The threat of $7 million in charges loomed like a storm cloud over everyone involved, making even casual neighbors feel the weight of the unfolding drama. Lawyers argued over details, journalists circulated stories, and the community's facade of civility cracked under public pressure. Rumors began spreading about hidden motives, secret confrontations, and alliances forming in unexpected corners. Friends turned into skeptics, and even those who tried to stay neutral felt the tension pressing in on all sides. The neighborhood, once a quiet enclave, now felt like a stage for a battle no one fully understood. As the court date approached and the investigation tightened, every interaction, every glance, every conversation seemed charged with consequence. Residents waited with bated breath, knowing the next moments could change lives forever. And just when it seemed the storm might reach its peak, a new, shocking revelation emerged, threatening to ignite the conflict even further and leaving everyone wondering who would truly come out unscathed. Just when everyone thought the tension had reached its peak, a new revelation sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. During a late-night review of surveillance footage, investigators discovered that the fire might not have been entirely spontaneous. There were subtle signs suggesting someone else had been involved, someone who had been quietly watching the streets for days, lingering near the driveway at odd hours. This new evidence hinted at a deeper conspiracy. And suddenly, HOA Karen's son wasn't the only one under scrutiny. Neighbors who had stayed silent began whispering about strange late-night visits, unfamiliar faces around the block, and odd phone calls that didn't add up. The Black family, already traumatized by the destruction of their Rolls-Royce, now faced the unnerving possibility that the threat was bigger than a single act of reckless anger. The sense of security in the community, already fragile, completely unraveled. Karen herself grew more erratic, alternating between fierce denial and cryptic statements, leaving everyone questioning what she knew and what she was hiding. Legal teams scrambled to investigate whether the new evidence could shift the federal charges or uncover an accomplice who had remained in the shadows. Every conversation in the neighborhood now felt like a potential clue or a trap. The $7 million federal case loomed even larger, now intertwined with questions of hidden motives, secret alliances, and a potential cover-up. Every resident, every witness, and every family became part of a story that had grown far beyond the initial fire. And as the days drew closer to the court proceedings, the fear, suspicion, and anticipation became unbearable. No one could predict what shocking twist would surface next, or who would emerge unscathed from the chaos that was still unfolding. The courtroom was packed, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Every eye in the room seemed to bore into HOA Karen's son as the prosecutor laid out the evidence. The surveillance footage, the social media posts, eyewitness accounts, and the overwhelming financial stakes of the $7 million federal charges. The gravity of his actions, setting fire to a neighbor's Rolls-Royce, was undeniable, and the room seemed to hold its collective breath as each detail was revealed. Karen sat rigid, her carefully crafted composure cracking as the testimony painted a picture of entitlement and recklessness. But just when it seemed the case was about to reach its predictable conclusion, the twist emerged. Investigators revealed that the fire had not been started solely by her son. Security footage showed another figure, a mysterious neighbor who had harbored a grudge against the Black family for months, secretly aiding in the arson. This revelation not only shifted some of the blame, but exposed the undercurrents of prejudice and rivalry that had been simmering in the